business intelligence and ERP implementations, HubSpot's acquisition of Cacheflow, and the hidden keys to ERP implementation success. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 195 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to make it fun.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, the podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This is the tech-agnostic view of digital strategy, people, process, and technologies. Thanks for being here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited for a great show here today. I've got a first-time guest on the show. We're going to actually have several guests on the show. And at the end of the day, we're going to have many guests, but we'll have one primary guest on the show later today that's going to be on talking about business intelligence and ERP implementations. We're going to talk about the hidden keys to ERP implementation success. I had a chance to go to a conference and sort of go behind the scenes, on the scene, and ask a bunch of people about what they think the keys to success are. So we're going to get the perspectives of some of those people that I had a chance to meet with at the conference. We're going to play you that video clip here later today. But before we get to those guests that are going to talk about all this stuff with us, we're also going to get into some social media questions to start things out. And we'll also get into some newsworthy topics, one being HubSpot's acquisition of Cacheflow. And then Acumatica has some news. Acumatica is an ERP provider. In fact, Acumatica is in our top 10 list of top ERP vendors to consider for 2025 and beyond. But Acumatica is a cloud-based ERP provider for small and mid-sized companies. They announced a major platform update introducing AI-powered user interface. So be curious to hear more about that here later today in the show. But before we get to all that good stuff we have coming up, Darian, you've had a chance to curate some questions from social media for us. What have you got in store for us?
Yeah, this first one's a good one. It's my company wants to implement an ERP system, and I'm currently looking at several. Our company does sales in the automotive industry. We also have a mining department, real estate, and soon a security company. What ERP do you recommend for this? So in short, we'd want an ERP that is strong in finance, inventory, sales, purchase, and eventually HR as well. Looking forward to your answer.
I am too, because I'm curious to hear what I come up with here on the fly. But that's an interesting perspective or interesting set of requirements because, first of all, I mean, on the surface, you have to look at the fact that you're talking about mining and automotive, for example. Those are two so different processes or sets of processes related to building a car, building something in automotive versus mining for whatever commodity they might be mining for. And you have to really look at the things that make those unique industries different and what some of the different specific needs are. So, for example, when you look at mining, there's a lot of unit of measure type stuff you have to think about. You know, in other words, can the system or the technologies you deploy, can they manage all the different components of the mining process as far as not only the assets and the equipment used to mine itself, but also once you get the asset, whatever the asset is that you're mining from the ground, presumably, whether it's gold or copper or whatever, how do you measure it? How do you weigh it? How do you track it in the system? That's pretty unique because it's different than tracking like a widget. You know, it has a very specific unit of measure. You have one widget or you have two widgets, but with mining, it's more of a process-based unit of measure to where you're not talking about units in terms of one or two, you're talking about ounces or pounds or tons, and you have to be able to translate those units of measure, which can be very taxing on a lot of technologies. So having said all that, now I've told you how difficult it is to choose a system that can do all the things that this particular organization needs. Now you think, okay, well, what system is it? Well, I mean, if this is a larger diversified organization, I'd say you're probably going to want to be looking at SAP or Oracle, because those larger, more complex, more robust systems can handle the diversity of this business. But if this business is a smaller, mid-sized company and they're that highly diversified, that's where it becomes a little stickier, because SAP and Oracle might be overkill for you if you're a smaller mid-market company. But at the same time, you need a system that's sort of big and robust and can do all these different things, in which case you might look at like a Microsoft Dynamics, either F&O or maybe Business Central. Microsoft Dynamics has two aspects of D365, depending on how much you need. So Microsoft might be a good fit in that case. If you are a smaller mid-market company, you could try looking at NetSuite or, one of the smaller ERP systems, and then looking for best of breed solutions to bolt on, which you probably need to handle, all the various diverse manufacturing needs around automotive and mining and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different options, depending on how big or how small they are, but those are a few that come to mind.
Yeah, for sure. And it would obviously help to have more information, and you'd probably be able to give a little
Right.
bit better advice there as well. But if you are going through an ERP selection or implementation, you can always go to our contact us form on the Third Stage website and set up a meeting with one of our directors or salespeople to talk through what you're going through with your company, if that would be more helpful. But thank you, Eric, for answering that today. The next question is why recently we released, to give context to this question, we released our top 10 list for ERP systems and softwares in 2025. And one question we got from this was, why did Microsoft Business Central not make the list?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we get that question every year that Business Central doesn't make the list. And actually, we called out Business Central as sort of an honorable mention, or one that we could have made a strong argument for including in the top 10. In fact, we picked out 3 honorable mentions, and Business Central was one of them. The reason Business Central is not on the list is largely because we just happen to see more finance and operations types of implementations within the Microsoft ecosystem, and Microsoft D365 F&O rated very high. In fact, it was number 1 on our list, on our top 10 list. And you can download that top 10 list by going to our website. If you go to thirdstage-consulting.com, and just go to the resource center at the top of the screen in the menu, go to the resource center, and you'll find their 2025 digital transformation report featured there. You can download it. You can look at the full top 10 list, see the justification. But we include D365 in the top 10. They are number 1 with finance and operations, but Business Central, the Business Central version of the system, did not make the list, largely because it's, when you look at the small and mid-market, NetSuite is just a lot more common. We just see a lot more NetSuite. We see a lot more Acumatica within certain industry verticals that we work in. But having said that, I mean, Business Central is a very strong product. It's very well established. It's been around for a long time. It's part of the Microsoft ecosystem, obviously. It's good. It's a good option for small and mid-market companies. If I was going to do a top 10 list for small and mid-market companies, I would for sure include Business Central in that list. To probably be in the top 3 or 5, I would imagine. So definitely a strong system depending on what your needs are. But when we look across industries, across geographies, across company sizes, Business Central just is so, it's more focused on that small and mid market. So it wasn't included in the general ranking for that reason.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. But I'm excited to get into some different newsworthy topics today. Those were some great social questions.
Yeah, thank you. And as always, if you ever have questions, just drop them on whatever platform you want, and we scour through that stuff. So whatever platform you follow us on, drop the questions in there, and we'll get to as many as we can on this podcast. So thank you for sharing those questions there. You've got some newsworthy topics for us. What have you got in store for us?
Yeah, this first one is about Acumatica and their new update. So their update they announced was a major platform update introducing AI-powered user interface and over 350 enhancements to its developer community. The new AI features adapt to users' habits for a personalized experience and include tools like optical character recognition for improved data processing. Additionally, Acumatica is launching an industry edition for professional services targeting sectors like IT, consulting, and engineering, with features for customer service and project management. Updates also enhance existing editions in general businesses, distribution, retail, construction, and manufacturing. Analysts note that these AI-driven improvements are critical as businesses seek modern ERP solutions to automate workflows and gain a competitive edge, which is something obviously we talk about a lot on here. But I want to ask you some questions about this update, Eric. With Acumatica, with their AI-powered insights and enhancements, how does that change the landscapes for SMBs using ERP systems?
It's a good reminder that AI, for all the attention it's getting around, generative AI and being able to create stuff, whether it's a CAD drawing or a blog article or a product master, whatever it is you need to generate within your organization, chances are pretty high that AI can help with that. So you get a lot of attention, or you end up spending a lot of time talking about that aspect of generative AI. But I think people oftentimes forget, or maybe just AI doesn't get the same attention as it relates to user interface. And that sounds a lot like what you're talking about. What Acumatica is trying to do here is to create this sort of better user experience and make it easier for end users to interact with the system and to get the information they need and all that good stuff. So I think that's sort of where we're headed with AI. And I think that's, the underrated impact that AI is going to have on ERP systems in the future is just the ability for end users and people that have had trouble learning new systems in the past. Now it's suddenly making it easier to navigate and to figure out, how to get the information you need and how to complete the transactions you need to complete within the system without necessarily having to follow a super rigid, hard to remember sort of a process.
For sure. And with AI, do you think that with businesses that are seeking ERP systems and going out and finding a new ERP system, or maybe it's their first ERP system, do you think AI integration in ER platforms is becoming the bare minimum standard, or do you still think that we will see a lot of systems without it?
No, I think it's becoming sort of the bare minimum standard. I mean, if you look at, a lot of the consumer technologies that we're all using, like, for example, LinkedIn, when you're on LinkedIn now, if you go to create a post, you automatically have a prompt there that'll help you write your post. So it's sort of like, and that's just one example, of course, but a lot of technologies that you use on the consumer side are starting to just show up with AI features. And that's sort of what we're seeing in the ERP space as well, is you're starting to see these, all these different prompts or all these different usages of AI or possibilities that AI could be embedded within these different workflows. And for example, what with Acumatica that you just mentioned, Darian, how many enhancements did they say there were? Did you say like 150 or something like that?
350.
350.
Yeah.
So, you look at that and you think, okay, that's a lot of changes, a lot of updates, but I would imagine most of those are probably AI related, just, different parts of the system where they're embedding AI and giving you the option to use AI to make your job easier. So I think the bare minimum is going to be to have some form of AI within the systems, but as Acumatica is demonstrating and other vendors are demonstrating the same thing, they're going to keep building AI prompts and functions throughout all the different workflows. And I think it's just going to, at some point, just become the norm within these ERP systems.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that was really emphasized in this article that I mentioned was the personalization to user adaptment with AI in the platform. So with this, Eric, how does AI contribute to more personalized and intuitive user experience in ERP platforms? What does that actually look like? If you could give us an example.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because AI allows us to interact with technology in a way that's more human, if that makes sense. Because it's on one hand, you think, well, AI is inhuman. It's the coldest way to to interact with technology, but in many ways, it's not, because AI is the first technology I can think of where it thinks and acts more like a human than most technologies that we've seen in the past. So in other words, you don't need to be a super technical person, or even you don't even necessarily need to know how the system works the way you might have in the past. Now you can just interact with the technology and say, show me, the last 10 deals that were closed, or tell me, what our revenue was for the month of August 2023, or whatever it is you need. And so it's more of a conversation with technology. It's more of I think it creates a certain amount of stickiness and a natural interaction, even though it may not sound or feel natural at first. But as you get into it more, you start to realize that this technology acts more like a human than most others that we've used in the past.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see how you can have conversations with it or, personalize your own AI. I know we have talked about this before where your chat GPT maybe responds differently to you than if I was to use mine, because your AI gets to know what you type and what you say to them, or it. And it's super interesting to see how it develops like a human in that way of personalization between people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it is quite fascinating and less and less scary the more the more people continue to use it. I think they get more comfortable, and just like any new technology, you start to learn more about it.
For sure. Yeah, we're going to switch gears here for our next newsworthy article, get away from AI for a little bit, and we're going to go to HubSpot and how they have acquired Cacheflow, which is a startup specializing in software sales closing tools for an undisclosed amount. So we don't know how much, but Cacheflow will enhance HubSpot's Commerce Hub, adding subscription billing and CPQ management to streamline business to business software sales. This Cacheflow was founded in 2021 and has raised $16 million and has served dozens of customers. This acquisition marks HubSpot's first since buying Clearbit in 2023 and follows a reported failed acquisition bid by Google. Here are some questions that I have for you about this, Eric. First of all, how do you think Cacheflow's focus on subscription billing and CPQ will enhance HubSpot's overall strategy, particularly in its Commerce Hub?
Well, just to clarify for the audience too, if you don't know what CPQ is, it's configure price quote, and it's a capability that allows organizations to basically on the sales side have the right inputs or accurate inputs into how they should be quoting things. Whether it's selling software, or manufacturers use it a lot. Like if you're a manufacturer that creates custom products, the configure price quote module will allow you, or it'll allow salespeople to create configurable products that fit certain business rules. So in other words, a salesperson isn't an engineer and they may not know how the software or the product they're selling works, but they need to know how it works to be able to sell it. So the system helps them bridge that gap to be able to configure products in the way they're able to be configured. So that's what CPQ is. And so, building that CPQ along with the subscription-based billing, I think it goes to show that, HubSpot obviously seems to think or seems to have a pretty heavy concentration of customers in the technology space that are doing subscription types of billing, whether they're cloud service providers or cloud software providers or something different. So that's something that is certainly interesting to see. So I think it's just a good augmentation to what HubSpot's core sales and marketing functionality can do. And it's really allowing them, I imagine it's allowing them to really go deep into certain industries like the technology space, or even maybe some manufacturers with that CPQ capability you're talking about too. I don't know if that's going to appeal to manufacturing types of companies or allow them to maybe build some more robust capability that a Salesforce CRM might have. So I think it's a good move, especially as they try to move upstream and try to compete more and more with Salesforce on the CRM and marketing side of things.
For sure. That was actually my next question, is if, this acquisition positions HubSpot more directly in line with competitors like Salesforce. So I guess you kind of already answered that. But the next question I would have was, what are some potential challenges that HubSpot might face integrating Cacheflow's technology into its existing suite of tools?
Well, I think one thing that HubSpot has to watch, and we use HubSpot at third stage. So we use it for our CRM. We also use it for our marketing automation. We use it for our lead capture on our websites. We use it for a lot of different things. So I'm pretty familiar with HubSpot. We're all pretty familiar with it at our company. And the thing about HubSpot that's great is it's a pretty simple product. When you compare it to a Salesforce, it's not nearly as heavy as a Salesforce. It's not as complicated. It's not as hard to set up. It's not as hard to use. And there's some value in its simplicity. But having said that, for some organizations, they need something that's more complex and more robust, like a Salesforce. And so HubSpot, might be moving up to try and sort of compete more with Salesforce. But it makes me wonder if they should, my word of warning to them, unsolicited word of advice, would be to not overcomplicate the technology, because I think that's part of the appeal that they have, is that it's a fairly simple product to use. And if you start adding new acquisitions and even your own features and functions that you build over time, there's a tendency to make these systems overly cumbersome and overly complex. So that would just be the one thing I'd say is, they want to make sure that they integrate the product without complicating the core product that they already have.
For sure. And one last question about this, particularly concerning smaller businesses that are relying on HubSpot for its sales and marketing. How do you think this acquisition could impact them?
I think it probably just opens them up to additional revenue streams and additional markets that they might not have otherwise appealed to. So, certainly the high tech industry and the software industry is likely to be more attracted to a HubSpot with this Cacheflow acquisition and integration of the product into HubSpot. So that's where I think that they're going to see additional traction, is just being able to focus their efforts on certain requirements or functions that certain industries are going to need that they may not be fulfilling right now with HubSpot's current capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm excited to kind of switch gears again, I guess, here and get into today's conversation.
Yeah, we'll continue that thread of integration and, sort of third-party tools and bolt-ons, just as the case with Cacheflow and HubSpot. In this case, though, we're going to talk about business intelligence. We're going to talk about how business intelligence fits into ERP systems and ERP implementations. We're going to have Dominique Frechette from Guru Solutions out of Montreal. He's going to be on the show here today, talking about that with us. And then later, after we have Dominic on the show, stay tuned, because we'll also talk with several people on the scene at a conference, an industry software conference that I recently went to, and had a chance to ask people what they thought the keys to ERP implementation success are. So I got a bunch of experts that I sort of pulled aside and asked them the question. So we do sort of a lightning round of what these experts and gurus all think the keys to success are. So you'll want to stick around to learn from them as well. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you'll want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 195. This is the tech agnostic podcast that has everything to do with digital transformations. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients select and implement various enterprise technologies. And this show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, produced by Major Tom Productions. So thank you for being here today. Excited for our next guest, who's a first-time guest. His name is Dominique Frechette. I took 2 years of French in high school, which is just enough for me to butcher French-based names like Dominique, so I apologize for that. But Dominique Frechette is joining us. He's the general manager of a company called Guru Solutions, which does BI tools, among other things. And he's going to be on the show here today talking to us about how business intelligence integrates or can integrate with ERP software and ERP implementations in general. So with that all being said, Dominique, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Eric.
It's great to have you. So before I jump in and just start asking you all the stuff about BI and analytics and ERP technologies, all the stuff we're going to get into here today, tell us a little bit about, first of all, about you, but you personally and your sort of career path and how you got to where you are, but also tell us a little bit about Guru Solutions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I joined Gurus 10 years ago now. Prior to that, I was more in the engineering, industrial engineering, automation in the industry. And then I decided to join Gurus and get my first foray in IT, ERP implementation and all that stuff. So I joined initially as a VP of Professional Services and moved to the rank now heading the Gurus business in general. Gurus is a NetSuite ERP pure play reseller and consulting firm. So we implement and resell NetSuite as an ERP. And typically we serve an industry range, like in various industries like manufacturing, distribution, software services. But typically our customer range are the customers starting, say, at $10 million top lines up to, say, close to $1 billion top line. So that's typically the customer type we serve. And it's a interesting audience, especially for the topic of today, which BI, because typically that's the type of customer that are buying their first ERP. They typically move away from QuickBook and then they move to their first full-blown ERP. And then the question of BI comes along. And this question then led us to so many reflection around BI versus ERP, and do you need one versus the other, and both at the same time, that at the end we ended up developing our own BI solution for NetSuite-centric customer. So that's where we develop our expertise in BI for the ERP style audience.
Gotcha. Very good. So I guess as we get into this, though, tell us a little bit about how ERP software, ERP technologies, and business intelligence work together to help businesses make informed decisions, and how do they relate? Maybe we could start there, sort of a foundational overview of ERP and business intelligence. How do they fit together? How do they support each other?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because very often customer buying their first ERP think that they won't need an ERP or BI because, well, ERP has built-in reporting facilities. So if I'm buying an ERP, then I have basically my BI or at least my reporting tools built in. But the reality is we found a couple of use cases for which you need a dedicated BI, even if you have an ERP. The first family of use case where you need both is correlation, data correlation. For example, even if you buy a very complete ERP, it's very common practice that you will still have one or two best of breed system. You're an online retailer, you might be operating with your ERP and a Shopify e-commerce platform, for example. You're a distributor, you might be running your ERP and a dedicated WMS or things like that. So then all of a sudden you end up with key data in two independent systems. So you can run report with the native functionality of your ERP. You can run native report in, say, your Zendesk solution for your customer support desk. But then what if you need to build a report or investigate data event for which you have data in both systems? So correlation among multiple systems is typically the first use case for which we see a need for a BI on top of your ERP. And it's very common practice, and I would say even call that best practice, to still have one or two best of breed system on top of your ERP, typically for your core function. So even if you have the bulk of your data in the ERP, you still have very key important information in your best of breed that is supporting your core function. Along the line of correlation, then you might have also to do correlation between your ERP data and external data source. And by external, I mean external to your business. For example, you want to do an analysis on your sales trend for seasonal items that you resell with weather forecast. Well, weather forecast is not in your ERP, but clearly it's impacting how you're selling sporting goods. So how do you correlate those two types of data? While one is clearly outside your ERP, it's even outside your business system, but still publicly available.
Right.
For example, even our BI tool is leveraging Google BigQuery warehouse under the hood, and even part of the tutorial of a Google BigQuery tutorial, you learn how to pull data about weather forecast or demographic of states and things like that, how to pull that in your BI so that you can now do correlation with your ERP sales, for example. And then what we see is sometimes you even need to do correlation, but among ERP modules. So even within your own ERP platform, you end up having different modules. And typically the native functionality of those ERPs make it a bit more limited to join multiple, like, people that know SQL would call that multiple join. So sometimes native ERP functionalities have limited ways to join multiple modules together. It will support it, but only a little bit. So correlation is typically the very first family of use case for which you might need a BI on top of your ERP.
Right.
Then
great examples.
Then there is also the notion of volume. So, I mean, an ERP is based on an operational database, a database that has been optimized to operate, modify data. For example, I received that good, so you mark those goods as received in your ERP. Well, that means that this database might not have been optimized to pull huge volume of data just for the sake of reporting. And I remember in the old days, if you had an exec in his office running a very, very extensive report, slowing down the operation on the shop floor. So that's probably something you don't want. I mean, it's not happening that much with modern system, but still volume is sometimes a very good reason to have a BI on top of your ERP.
Yeah. Those are all really good reasons. And I have a follow-up question I want to ask you on that here in just a moment, but I do want to turn to the audience real quick and give a quick shout out to some of the people that commented on where they're joining from today. I want to say hello to Alcinda, who's joining from Johannesburg, South Africa. Kevin's joining from Denmark on LinkedIn. So thank you for being here. Niloy is joining from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And then we also have Mike on YouTube from Houston, Texas, and Darian joining from Denver, Colorado. So thank you for being here today. And then we have a comment here on YouTube from Rocket League Noob. What the heck is this? Well, this is a conversation related to digital transformation, business intelligence, analytics, reporting, all that stuff as it relates to ERP technology. So thank you all for being here today. And then also we have John from Montreal joining on LinkedIn as well. So thanks everyone for commenting where you're joining from today. Again, any questions or comments you have on the topic here of business intelligence, love to hear from you as we go through the conversation. But Dominique, you give a great overview of how or where you might need or want to consider business intelligence tools to augment your existing enterprise technologies. Why wouldn't I, if I'm an enterprise technology buyer, and let's just say I buy NetSuite or any other ERP system out there, why wouldn't I just use the BI that they've already got? Like why do I need a separate BI tool, or why don't the ERP vendors just have that BI capability built in automatically?
Yeah, well, typically what we've seen, and it's something we can cover a bit more details later, but if you need, and again, I come back with this idea of correlating data from various data sources. If you want to use a native ERP function, reporting functionalities to report on data sitting in another system, well, then it means that you need to bring the data from that other system back in the ERP. And there's very good operational reason to do so. But if you want to do so purely for reporting, you might end up polluting your ERP with tons of data that is not needed to operate the business. And you bring it just for purely reporting. So that's why at some point we say, well, these systems like an ERP, a CRM, or a Zendesk style customer support system, they are operational systems. They are there to help you operate the business, to log a transaction, to see if you have the item in inventory, to help a sales guy carry through a sales cycle. But if you want to do reporting and trend analysis, then you probably need to have data from all those systems and purely in a read-only fashion. So also then you want to be a bit more creative on how the way you structure your data and the way you analyze it than what this strict requirement from an operational perspective is bringing. I mean, those systems are quite rigid for a good reason. I mean, like an ERP, it's at the base, it's an accounting system. I mean, the data has to be structured such that it's compliant with accounting standard. But it might not support what you want to investigate in terms of trends. I want to see which of my sales rep is the most efficient during a given season and selling which item. All of a sudden, you need more creativity on the way you build your report than what those native reporting facilities would provide.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Now, when companies are trying to integrate business intelligence with their ERP systems, what are some of the common challenges or the most common challenges that they face?
So let's be clear. Typically, the ERP is your most complex data source in the business. I mean, a CRM is typically a complex data source, but never as complex as the one you have in an ERP. First and foremost, ERP data model is always complex because of the accounting compliance that goes under the hood. For example, you won't be able to remove an item from your ERP if you already logged a transaction that is posting with it. And typically, ERP have been also on the market for a long time, so there's tons of legacy reason that creates some kind of intricacy in the data model. So the data model of your ERP is the most complex data model that you need to bring in a warehouse under the hood of a BI. So the very first common challenge we see is people thinking about the ERP as just another data source. But the reality is that's the most complex one, and the one that is also the most complex to decipher. So one of the big challenges is how to pull and make sense of that data source when you bring it in BI. And because in the BI, what you want is to ease the job of the people building a report to investigate what they want to investigate about the business. And you don't want to make them specialists about the ERP data model itself and all its intricacies. So I would say that's typically the first challenge is people pick the wrong architecture. So if we take a step back, what's the architecture of a BI? I mean, I'm going to bring it very simple. The first part is you need a database warehouse. So basically a database optimized for reporting. So warehouse, cube, call it the way you want, but a database purely for reporting. Then typically you need to connect a visualization tool to it. So the Tableau, the Power BI, things like that. So you want to connect that visualization layer to your warehouse. And typically, you would pick the visualization layer based on what your user already knows. So if you're already familiar with Power BI, or if you're already familiar with Looker Studio, then go for it and connect it to your warehouse. But then you need a connector that connects your data source and bring the data in your warehouse, and a data model in the warehouse that makes the job easy for people building a report. And this is where this is the biggest challenge. We've seen people going for simple database replication tools, and then they try to replicate the database model. And at the end, they say, okay, but how can I make sense of all those cryptic names and columns? And how do I do all those multiple join between that specific transaction and the items and the payment of that transaction? All those links are typically completely broken when you just go with a simple database replication tool. So this is the most common challenge we face. And we see it specifically for ERP, a bit less for other business systems.
Yeah. Yeah. And just getting, the good business intelligence and getting value out of business intelligence tools are only as good as the data you have in the system. So, I mean, do you see a lot of organizations that are struggling with just having clean data or accurate data that gives them accurate business intelligence?
What we see is from the data that is coming from the ERP, again, because the ERP and all these call that requirements for compliance with accounting, typically the data in their ERP is quite good in terms of integrity, links between the data, cleanness. For example, in an ERP, you just cannot remove a customer name if there's a transaction attached to that customer. So typically the data on the ERP alone, when you bring it in the ERP, if you do a good job of deciphering it, you're good. Challenge comes as soon as you bring more than one data source in the system. For example, you bring data from your ERP and you bring data from your CRM, and all of a sudden the same customer has been spelled twice differently.
Right.
But the goal of the BI is to correlate data between what you have in your CRM and what you have in your ERP. But then you cannot correlate because the customer name has not been spelled correctly.
Right.
So this is type of things where we see a bit more about the data integrity, and then people cannot build a report and cannot rebuild those links. Even sometimes, even just the database replication tool will break the links. And let's face it, the power of the reporting is the links. If you break the links, well, at the end, it's just tables of data.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give a kind of example of that potential data breakdown that you just described, let's just say, your name is Dominique Frechette. And let's just say, that obviously the real spelling of your first name is IQUE at the end. But if I enter a new Dominique Frechette thinking that it's spelled with an IC at the end, the Americanized version of your name, then then now I've got two records with the same person and the data doesn't necessarily consolidate. So I've got to clean that up now, merge those two records to create, a data set that BI could draw from that's accurate. Because if I don't do that, then BI is still, even though it's a great tool, still going to be inaccurate because the data is wrong.
Exactly. So, and now, I mean, even you mentioned my name typos, but now look at my family name with an accent on the third letter, and all your audience coming from abroad, I mean, they all know is like, do we put or not the accent in the system? And what if
what's
simple,
it called? The little what's that symbol called that goes above the E? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's not aigu, as we say in French. Yeah, so you just remove that one and replace that by a plain E on my letter, and then also then it might be two different records in two different systems. Bring that in the BI, and you cannot make a link anymore. So how come Dominique, as a sales rep, has been so poor performance in the last month, and you try to go and use your report BI tool to understand that, but then the reality, no, it was not that bad. It just was logged under with an accent and the other data system.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting and a great example. I'm here at Dominique Frechette. We're talking about business intelligence in ERP implementations. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 195. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital strategy and digital transformation. So thank you for being here today. I'm here with Dominique Frechette. We're talking about business intelligence in ERP implementations and ERP software. I'm also curious to hear from the audience here. What BI tools have you used? I'm just curious to hear if any of you have used BI tools of any sort in the past, whether it's embedded in your existing ERP system or where you've used Power BI or any other sort of third-party BI tool. I'd love to hear from you. Any comments or feedback on what your experience has been. So Dominique, can you share some examples, or do you have any like customers of yours or companies you've worked with at Gurus that have successfully leveraged BI tools to optimize their ERP systems? Could you give us maybe some use cases or examples of how you've seen customers you leverage BI?
So typically, we all think about the BI for the main three use cases. First one is serving daily operational dashboards. Like your CFO comes in the morning, drink his coffee, and look at a couple of reports about bank accounts and sales that happen overnight, things like that. Or performing data investigation. Something strange happened, the performance of a sales rep dropped, and you try to investigate. Or as we discussed at length, trying to correlate multiple data sources. But we have seen customers that have used BI also a bit outside these beaten path of BI usage. The first one I love is board package automation. CFO's nightmare typically after they close the month. So it's already a big nightmare. They need to close the month. October, like end of October is coming. After Halloween, all of a sudden they have 5 days to close the month. It's already a very intense week in their month. But then the following week, they also need to pull a tons of reports to prepare a board package. Suppose they are a public company or they have institutional investor on board. Sometimes even just their bank needs the board package. And all of that, all of a sudden, not only you need your financial reports, which you can pull from an ERP or out of the box, but you might have to format it in a specific way for your board. Your investor might need specific metrics, and then you also need tons of, I would call that non-financial reporting. So if you're a SaaS business, you might have to report on churn, which is beyond what you will find in financial statement. And typically that's what you see all of a sudden the finance team scrambling around, looking for a couple of reports out of 2 or 3, 4 systems, then pulling that in Excel and trying to format that and then submit that just in time for the board meeting. So we have seen customers using BI purely to automate all their board package. So as soon as the month end is finished, they close their books, they push a BI button and it prints like 25 pages of reports, and that becomes the basis of their board package report. So this is an example of where you can use BI to save time, provide insight in your business through those reports, and even provide those insights for an audience that is external to your business. So board package automation, we love to talk about that story because it's definitely one place where we could see the stress level of our CFO's customer being lowered a little bit by the use of BI.
Right. If you can keep the executives happy, then that's that right there is probably a good business case for BI tools.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be careful with your audience, but a stressed CFO is typically not a good news in a business.
Right. I would agree with that.
Another use case we've seen in the context of an ERP is typically when you move from a legacy ERP, you move to another one. And then all of a sudden it's okay, and what do I do with the data in my legacy ERP? I've been using that tool for the last 10 years. I might bring all the data in the new ERP, but then why would I do so? Like, why would I bring all my former employees just because in the new ERP, just because there's one transaction I want to bring that was done under the name of that employee? And tons of things like that. I mean, as soon as you start to pull data out of a legacy ERP to bring in the new one, you realize that there's multiple, I mean, it's like pulling a tree out of the soil. I mean, there's tons of ramification that you need to bring at the same time. So then you might say, okay, no, I'm just going to import in my new ERP the data that I need to operate now, like an open transaction. This is a PO I placed to a vendor. I've not yet received the goods. I've not paid that vendor yet. So this is an operational transaction. Let's put that in the new ERP. But then, especially if you're cloud-based or SaaS-based, I mean, that data, the day you stop paying your legacy ERP, you lose access to the data. So you're stuck in that dilemma of, it's bad to bring all the data, but it would be bad to leave it behind also.
Right.
We've seen customers use the BI such that they implement the BI for their new ERP with the correct data model in the BI to support their new ERP. But at the same time, they do a one-time load of the legacy data in the new BI, and that becomes the repository in the BI. And then people that build report can do seamless report where you transition from one data source to another, because you have your new data from the new ERP that is always fresh, synced overnight every day, and your legacy data that doesn't move anymore because, I mean, you're not using that legacy software, but the data is still residing in the warehouse, and it allows you to do all the reporting that you need to do, especially when you're looking at long-term trend in your reports.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. And those are great examples of where you can be getting value, or where you're seeing customers get value out of
outside the usual things where we expect to get value, which is correlation,
right,
and daily dashboard serving
just standard dashboard, standard reports, that sort of thing. Yeah, there's a lot more value than just that, although that alone can provide a lot of value too. Also want to turn to the audience here. A couple comments here. Olubengo joining from X says, hello, Eric. I'm a huge fan, learning a lot from you. Thank you for joining here today, Olubengo. Also want to show just some comments here that the audience commented on regarding what systems or what BI tools they have experience with. Alcinda on LinkedIn says Power BI is widely used in my organization. Niloy on LinkedIn says he's used IBM Cognos as well as Microsoft BI. Kevin on LinkedIn has used native Power BI and Tableau. So some good examples of some good BI tools. How would you, how is your, just out of curiosity, how is your tool set that you guys work with at Gurus and that you offer to customers? How is that different than some of the others that are out there in the marketplace?
So I would say the main difference is really the connector that brings NetSuite data in the warehouse. So the warehouse is a Google BigQuery. So we love that warehouse because it scales easily, cloud-based, ready for AI. Also, we can discuss that a bit later if you want. And then we let the customer choose the visualization layer they like. I mean, customer that already trained on Power BI, then they will connect their Power BI to that warehouse. People that love Tableau, well, you already have Tableau. You already have 20 people trained on Tableau. Let's connect Tableau on it. What we provide out of the box is a Looker Studio visualization layer, one from Google, very easy to use. But we've seen typically the two big names we've seen is Tableau and Power BI in terms of user preference for visualization layer. The real differentiator is really in the data model that you bring in the warehouse, how you decipher the data from the ERP such that people building report can make sense of that report. I'm going to use an example. It's NetSuite related, but every ERP will have that. For example, in the NetSuite data model, suppose you are a service firm, you use a project management module. Well, a project in NetSuite is a sub-customer also. But I mean, poor guy trying to build a report on a project profitability. And then also then project is also a sub-customer, depending on the situation. You have a customer and a sub-customer, but sometimes you have a customer and a project. So how do you decipher that? And also then you need to look at other flags. And then the job of building a report becomes easily very messy. So our connectors and the data model that we built has been do a very good job of deciphering that, building views. We call that views in the database, but it looks like other table, but it's table that makes a lot easier to decipher data. Another example that is true for all ERP, you typically have in ERP a transaction table. All your transaction. They might be related to your sales and revenue. They might be related to your purchase and expense, but it's all lumped in the same table.
Right.
No, so then you try to build a report to look at, for example, your spending on specific type of vendors, and you need to filter out from that huge humongous table. You need to decipher out to remove all the revenue type transactions so that you can focus on purchasing. Well, our connector, rather than just replicating the database transaction, the transaction table, will create multiple tables or multiple views of the same table so that you just can query one view from that.
Right.
Another thing is if you have a Power BI or Tableau or other BI expert here, trying to rebuild a balance sheet in a BI from a transaction table is a huge nightmare.
Right.
Anyone that tried that will understand what type of endeavor it is, especially if you have to deal with multiple currencies, with all the consolidation that comes with it. Like building a balance sheet is a nightmare.
Right.
So we build views. So when the connector sync data overnight, it builds views such that when you need to do a balance sheet report or balance sheet like report, then the job is maybe 2/3 or 3/4 done already. It's directly in the warehouse. So you don't need to re-implement all that logic about consolidated balance sheet in your Power BI tool, and in fact, reinventing a balance sheet report that ERP vendor has spent years to develop.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, a lot of what we've talked about so far has been focused on sort of the backward-looking aspect of BI. You know, like you mentioned, for example, the board packs, the board presentations every quarter, every year, whatever, however often it is that a team has to provide data to the board as far as metrics around the business. So a lot of it has been sort of backward-looking. So I'm curious. This is an interesting question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, how can companies ensure they're getting real-time insights from their ERP systems through BI tools? So in other words, you know, rather than necessarily waiting until the end of a period and then consolidating results and using BI to forward that, you know, board package onto the board, how can we use BI, or can we use BI to get more real-time sort of day-to-day real-time insights?
So I'm going to, and you know, I'm an engineer by training, so I'm going to define real-time, okay, first. And typically it's a very complex word in IT. What means real-time? And real-time is basically fast enough for for the intended purpose. So if the fast enough that you have in mind is, for example, knowing if you have an item in inventory to accept or not an order, this has to be done on the fly. It's within a second, within a minute that you need to have the answer. And this is the best place to leverage native reporting functionality of your system, of your WMS, or your ERP. You should not rely on a BI to know something that might have changed in the last minute.
Right.
Okay, this is the best place for the native reporting functionality. Otherwise, you might end up accepting an order for an item you don't have in inventory because another sales rep sold it 5 minutes before. If we're looking at real time in terms of daily, weekly report, this is where BI makes a lot of sense, because typically BI, you will sync like once a day, you will sync data from your various data source and bring that in your BI. And when you do so, and because remember, a warehouse has been optimized to pull report and not to insert data. So trying to sync your warehouse too often is typically not a good practice. But suppose that you are thinking about real time about daily or weekly basis. This is where BI shine. I've seen so many business, as you said, driving their business only looking backward, like at month end or quarter end. You look at the quarter result and then you need to take decision for the next quarter. Well, you know what? It's probably too late already, because by the time you have that board package, that event that you need to react on is already 3-4 months old. So what we've seen is people looking at BI to look at non-financial performance and take decision on it. Take an example, a service company. Time entries is key. With a BI, you can look at your time entries report every day. You're a VP of professional services in your, say, law firm, for example. You walk in, you look at time entries that has been input in the system the night before. You build nice report from that, investigate, and then you realize, oh, we need more people. And now you can take an hiring decision way sooner because you get real-time data. But by real time, we mean on a daily or on a weekly basis, and typically I call that non-accounting grade data. Like time entries is not a posting data that a CFO would report on, but it's still very useful for operation. Inventory movement also for distributors. Like, okay, all of a sudden we've seen a spike in the last 3 days of that inventory movement for that type of items. Maybe it's time to rush an order for that one and not wait for month-end analysis to realize, well, we don't have it in stock anymore. I mean, so these type of things, this is where you see real time, like on a daily, weekly, looking at non-financial data, I would call that.
Yeah, more the operational stuff. So in other words, the CFO that you were talking about earlier may not be as interested in that stuff, but the COO is going to be very interested in that, for example. I'm here at Dominique Frechette. We're talking about business intelligence in ERP implementations. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taflaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 195. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital strategy and digital transformation. So thank you for being here today. I'm here with Dominique Frechette. We're talking about business intelligence in ERP implementations and ERP software. So what do you think about as ERP systems evolve? How do you see BI and ERP continuing to work side by side, or do you see them working side by side? Do you see them becoming more integrated, or what do you see as sort of the future of BI within the world of ERP?
It's interesting. So in the world of ERP, I would not be surprised to see in future a bit more what we did at Gurus, which is BI that are ERP centric first and foremost. And again, mostly by accepting and acknowledging that the ERP is your most complex data source. So that I mean, it's obviously a bet we took at Google, who's investing in a NetSuite-centric BI tool, but it's definitely a trend we expect to see more in the future just because of that complexity. But then brings to that question is, okay, interesting, and I have a BI, I have an ERP, I log in my ERP every day because I need to do my business operation, but I would need to log into a BI tool to look at more my weekly reports and understanding, for example, if I need to reorder, rush something because I have more inventory movement on one thing. So we see a bit the concept of re-embedding your BI report in the ERP UI, such that the user can log in the ERP and through some clever mechanism within his ERP UI has a report that has in fact been built by the BI on the side. So that we see that as a potential trend of how ERP and BI can collaborate so that the user experience is a bit more seamless. You don't have to log into the independent system. What we can see also is that you might end up seeing in future a bit less, we call, when we say we integrate, say, a best of breed system into your ERP. And let's take, for example, you're connecting your Salesforce CRM to your NetSuite ERP. We've always seen two use cases for such integration. The first use case will stay. And the first use case is, for example, integrating so that when a sales rep in Salesforce won an opportunity, it creates a sales order in the ERP to minimize data entry by the finance team. All of a sudden, I'm getting a phone call from the rep, it won an opportunity and need to create a sales order in NetSuite. So that integration to minimize data entry will stick.
Right.
But what we've seen is people integrating or pushing that integration to bring more of their Salesforce data in NetSuite, for example. And if we follow that path of a closed one to a sales order integration, but bring tons of other data that are not needed from the sales order perspective, but just because they wanted to build their report out of the ERP. So they bring tons of data. We see this trend being done a bit less, such that people will say, no, let's connect those two systems for their operational intent. But from a pure reporting data analysis perspective, let's do the BI, pull the data out of the CRM and out of the ERP and then build a report there. So we could see that a bit more in the future rather than just pulling tons and tons of data in your ERP just for reporting it.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense and a lot of good examples there of how that evolution will likely continue. I want to say hello to Sandra, who's joining from on LinkedIn from Chicago. Thanks for being here today, Sandra. What about the cloud? You look at cloud systems, and obviously you guys have a product that's built on a SaaS cloud-based platform of NetSuite. So this might be somewhat of a moot point for your organization or for Gurus because your product is in the cloud and it's always been in the cloud, being part of the NetSuite ecosystem. But just in general, how do cloud solutions like a NetSuite or any of the other ERP systems that are moving to the cloud, how does cloud enable better business intelligence, or how do those two things go hand in hand?
Yeah, well, I would say at first cloud and BI did not work well together. It's a bit counterintuitive.
Is that because of the architecture, or sort of the difficulty architecting? Okay.
The way that most people use to implement the BI in their business was to access directly to the database of the operational system, like the ERP, or accessing directly the database of their CRM. I remember in my first days in business, I wanted to build a report. I would go in Excel, fire my ODBC style driver, directly go to my, I think at that time it was Microsoft Solomon I was using, and I would pull directly from the database data and build my report. So Excel was basically my first BI, like for many of us.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, cloud-based system appears. And cloud-based system are not going to expose their database as easily for plenty of good reasons. Security, upgrade. If those developers want to give themselves the right to change a column in their data model to implement a new features, and all of a sudden they don't want to break everything. So you don't have access to your database. And I would say that's the first thing we've seen when cloud appears that kind of broke the BI model. A typical way to you integrate Microsoft Power BI or Tableau is use an ODBC SQL-like layer and access to your database.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, native cloud system won't allow you to do that easily. And that's the case for NetSuite. Then those ERP vendors, they saw that it created tons of frustration with some of their user because, well, their user used to connect to the database layer of their legacy ERP. How come I cannot do that with my new ERP? So they start to offer ODBC-like connectors. So basically, it's almost like an interface that acts like you're accessing the database, but it's always slower, never has performance as you would like, does not support all the data that you have in your ERP. So all of a sudden, when you need to implement the BI in the context of a cloud-based system, you need to go to the API. And this is where all those typical database replication tools fall short.
Right.
They need to rely on the ODBC layer, SQL-like layer, but that one has not been built for the cloud. So also then performance are not there. And one of the use case of a BI is to have more volume, but now also then you cannot go to more volume because of that limitation. You're not using the native API, you're using a second thought style ODBC layer. So this definitely changed the way people implement BI on the cloud. Is you need to look at how you connect those systems differently.
Right. Yeah. Now, so we talk about cloud. What about artificial intelligence, machine learning? Let's talk about that for a minute. Now, how's the world of BI, AI, machine learning, how does it all fit together?
Yeah, it's an interesting. If we look at what happened in AI in the last, I would say, 12, 18 months, the big breakthrough, the one everyone is talking about, is ChatGPT-like tool, LLM.
Right.
What those tools are doing is they are great at generating stuff, generating text. So we already see a use right now, even with Go's BI, but other BI, where you can leverage those tools. Like in the case of Go's BI, is Gemini, which is built in Google BigQuery, so that you can, from a natural language prompt, ask it to basically to build a query for you and run the query. And then, for example, give me my top 5 sales rep in the last quarter. And then it would write a SQL query for you, run it, and you would see it in the report, like in natural language. Then you will look at that and say, oh, yeah, okay, but slice it by type of item sold. I mean, which of my rep are better by, say, the type of items. So you fine-tune your SQL query without knowing that much about SQL yourself.
Right.
So this, we see it today. It's already happening today. But today, I would say those tools are very good to help SQL savvy data scientists be faster and more efficient. But this is today. At the speed things are going, very quickly we see the concept of AI generation, like as a self-serve meaning. I mean, it's always been the holy grail of all those systems that you don't need to rely on your IT team just to build your report.
Right.
Hey, something strange happened yesterday in my inventory, and all of a sudden the first guy you call in your office is your IT guy, not your warehouse guy, because you need somebody to build a report for you. I mean, the goal is that you build your report yourself very quickly to understand what happened overnight with that inventory item, and then you call the warehouse guy and say, okay, what can we do about it?
Right.
But today we still need to go with IT people, and IT people can be more efficient because of what is available today. I would say within few months, not few years, few months, we can get definitely a lot closer in this concept of self-serve. The CFO, the CEO, the director of a given department using natural language to pull and build a report all of a sudden. So that would be good. And with this one, we see it's around the corner. But what is funny is that when people were looking at AI, I mean, AI has been investigated for the last, 20 years, more than that. That's not what people had in mind when they were thinking about ERP data and AI. They were thinking about 2 use cases, which is not an AI trained on natural language to pull data for you, but more about an AI model trained on your data, not trained on text that can pull data for you, but really trained on your data to achieve 2 things. The first one is, and the easiest one was anomaly detection. So that when you walk in the morning, you look at your computer and you have a red alert because there was a strange inventory movement during overnight. The AI has been trained on your data, and all of a sudden that movement is a bit unusual. What happened?
So it recognizes the anomaly, or it's trained to recognize the outliers of the anomalies,
or rather than just helping you build a report that can then you flag the anomaly.
Right.
The holy grail of AI was always a predictive analytics. It's like building all of a sudden is like trying to plan ahead with all that past data, like all those past sales, and that weather forecast that we have in the forecast for the next week. Expect more sales of that.
Right.
Like predictive analytics. That's the holy grail. And to be honest, this is not available today. And even here at Google, we played with tools like Vertex AI and things like that. And you can see that this is coming, but this is a bit further along than purely having a self-serve SQL, but that is building a report for you. It's because, and typically we think is because the data set that you have, even if you're a huge enterprise, your data set is still more limited than what ChatGPT had access to do a large language model things where they had access to the whole internet to train their model. While if you want to train your model on data, structured data that you own, then you don't own as much. So that's why we still think that there is some fine tuning to achieve this holy grail of predictive analytics with AI. At least for the mid-market layer that we're looking at, typically the company below $1 billion top line. This might be a couple of years again in front of them, but BI is still your foundation to get there. I mean, when you think about it, what an AI model needs to be accurate and trying to predict stuff is need access to as much data as possible of various data source and already structured so that you can train an AI model on it. And this is basically the data model that you have today in BI.
Right. So it's BI is not just about the reports that they produce. It's also about the sort of the foundation and the integration and the infrastructure, the data infrastructure to pull it all together. Is that
and then to have anomaly detection and predictive analytics that we've always been hoping for. I mean, and let's face it, ERP, what stands P for?
Right.
Planning.
Right.
What today ERP are doing is mostly record the past.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The forward-looking is still not has, I would say, it's still not the main feature of an ERP. It's still not the main feature of BI. And even ChatGPT-like AI is still to report, called that, in natural language from existing data set. Predictive analytics is the next holy grail, but this one has not seen the same progress as we've seen with large language model in the last 12 months.
Curious to hear it from the audience too. Are you seeing any use of AI and LLMs to sort of replicate what BI tools would normally do, or to get better insights from your system? I'm curious to hear if you're seeing that with AI or LLMs, or if you think that AI will AI replace business intelligence tools someday. It sounds like Dominique, you're saying probably not because you need that BI infrastructure. But I'm curious to hear from the audience too.
Yeah, we see that almost like just the same thing. It's just an easier way to understand your data.
Right. Right. So what about the organization that's just getting started on their journey and they're trying to figure out, not only what ERP system do I use, but then now there's another decision I might not need to make, which is business intelligence. How do I get business intelligence out of the tools that I'm investing in? So how do you recommend that an organization get started on their path forward for the digital transformation to include business intelligence? Like, how would you recommend that we bake this into our way of thinking as we think through our ERP project or our digital transformation?
So let's take the use case of a company that is buying their first ERP. So they don't have BI in place. They are moving out of QuickBooks. Say, for example, they reach $50 million top line, time to move out of QuickBooks and buy our first ERP. For those companies, we would say that when they are selecting the ERP, they should definitely look beyond what the ERP vendor are going to show regarding the built-in reporting capabilities. Let's face it, I mean, typically this question is putting the vendor in a tough spot. Okay. Right. And we are one of those vendors. We know that. It is like, because all of a sudden, you want to wow the customer that is looking for a new ERP with all those nice reports and BI concept. But you don't want to complexify your sales cycle by introducing a new tool. As you just mentioned, it just makes another decision, another thing to think about. So all of a sudden, sometimes vendor will oversell, I would say, a little bit their native reporting capabilities, such that the customer can buy the ERP without having to think about their BI at the same time, which I would say we agree to an extent to that approach. And we can come back where we agree, which I think it's good if you implement your first ERP, the first 3 months after go live, you just stick with your ERP and no extra tool. I mean, it's already a lot to digest by an organization.
Right.
But at the same time, you need to already have in mind which BI you will implement when it's time to get there. And I would say, make sure that you look that you have the solution in mind where the ERP and the BI will play well together again, because your ERP will be your most complex data source to bring in the ERP, in the BI. So looking at that, what would be the solution? How can I pull the data out of that specific ERP I'm about to buy? And how can I pull the data in and bring it into a warehouse? And by all means, I mean, we've seen so many of our customers trying with those database replication tool and being so disappointed that just go beyond that. You need to go beyond that. It's like, yeah, but does that data model will make sense once in the BI? Can I build a report out of that? And if you selected like a combo of warehouse or BI, connector and ERP that you know will work well together, then you can start by just implementing the ERP. You know, at least you took the right decision. You implement the ERP, deal with it for a while, explore the native reporting functionality to it as much as you can. And as soon as then you hit limitation like correlation that we mentioned, or a couple of things like that, or volume, then you move on to implementing the BI that you pre-selected beforehand.
Right. So sort of like looking at the big picture, understanding what the roadmap's going to be to include business intelligence as part of your planning and evaluation process, but then recognizing that you're probably going to implement BI later after you get the core foundational stuff in place. Then BI sort of fits on top of that. Yeah, very good. Well, good. Well, this is really good. This is really good stuff, Dominique. Really appreciate you taking the time here today to answer these questions about BI. Such a fascinating topic, especially now with the advent of the cloud and AI and LLMs and all that stuff. It's really interesting to hear more about your perspectives. How do people learn more about you and about Guru Solutions? What are the best ways to learn more about your tools that you guys offer?
Yeah, typically our website and www.gurusolutions.com that we can share. So a good way to learn a little bit more about our solution, our services, and then on our website there's tons of contact forms there. You can also reach me on LinkedIn if you want, and we would be happy to share more data and information with you.
All right. Thank you, Dominique. Great conversation. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to debrief on some of what we just talked about here with Dominique. Darian and I are going to build on some of those points, and we're also going to play you a video here in just a moment on the scene at an industry conference I was recently at to learn from some experts on what they think the keys to ERP implementation success are. So we've got a lot more to cover in this episode, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello and welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 195. This is the tech agnostic digital transformation podcast that you want to check out every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also see all the past episodes that you might have missed of this episode or of this series. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to learn more about that. So, Darian, we just had Dominique on the show talking about business intelligence in digital transformations and ERP implementations. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, I think at the end there, when he was wrapping up, some final thoughts of going through an ERP implementation and, implementing BI, I thought that you guys put it very well in saying that companies have to make sure they're looking at the big picture. If they're going through their ERP implementation or their selection, they maybe know that they're not implementing BI right away, but knowing that, okay, in a year, 2 years from now, we know that we want to add it into our system. I thought that point was really great and hopefully a good takeaway for a lot of companies. And then another comment, we had some great audience comments and another one from Alcinda on LinkedIn that I really liked was, at the base of AI and BI is clean, good data. And I thought that was such a great point. And with that, Eric, when companies have bad data, let's say they don't have what she's saying, what are some changes if they're not sure what to do? What are some changes they can do in order to, clean that data and make that good quality, good data?
Yeah, that's a great question. We didn't really dive into that as much as I had hoped, but in terms of data migration and data governance. But those are the two real things, are data migration and governance. So first is data migration and data cleansing. So you think about the data we have, we've got to figure out how to clean it up to make sure it's accurate. And in that conversation, Dominique and I were talking about, if you misspell a customer name and that customer is in the system twice, now you've got data related to that same customer in two different places, and they don't necessarily come together to represent the full picture of that one customer. So that's just one example of that's where you'd want to clean up that data. So if I misspell a name, now I want to merge those records, spell the name correctly, and make sure all that data is together under that same customer record. And that's just a micro, sort of a tiny example of how you want to clean up data. You take that times thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of customers that you might have, and you can see how many errors there could be in that mass amount of data. So that's the first thing, is we've got to cleanse the data, and then we've got to migrate the data. So once we cleanse it, now we've got to move it over to the new system, make sure we get it in the right way, make sure the fields are mapped right, because the fields in the old system might be called one thing, but then that same field has a new name in the new system. So we want to make sure we map everything to the right place. So that's sort of the mapping and migration part of it. So there's data cleansing, there's data mapping and migration. And then the final piece, I'd say, or the final big piece, is more the ongoing piece of it, which is data governance. So now we've cleaned the data, we've mapped it, we've migrated it. We don't want to just put it in a new system so that humans can go in and muck it up again and screw up the data and create duplicates and do all the things that we're doing wrong in the first place. Now we've got to create a better structure for how we govern that data, to where not everyone has access to potentially get their hands in it and mess up the data, if that makes sense. So we've got to create processes and governance and standards around how data gets created, how it gets edited, how it gets cleaned up consistently, all that stuff, because otherwise we might clean it up, we map it, migrate it, it's all good to go when we go live, but then just a few days after go live, we start corrupting it again, because now we don't have the governance in place. So we've got to have all three of those things in place to make sure that we have accurate data longer term, so that we can get better value and more accuracy out of the BI tools that we talked about with Dominique.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. One other point I wanted to expand on that I know you guys chatted about was, the thought of if AI will replace BI one day. And I know he said that he didn't think so, but I wanted to get what your thoughts are on this, and if you agree or disagree, and if so, why?
Yeah, I'm on the fence, honestly, and it was a legitimate question I had for him, because I don't know the answer to it. part of me thinks that AI could replace BI and do some of the things he talked about, because one of the things Dominique talked about was sort of your best of breed environment where you've got multiple systems. BI tools are a great way to sort of consolidate that data and bring it into a common format, in a complete format that gives you the whole picture, which is great. That is a huge amount of value. But I do wonder if AI could somehow replicate that over time. Could I use AI, or could I build a AI widget or bot or something on the front end that does the same thing, that goes into these legacy systems and gets the information I need and gives me that same consolidation? I think the beauty of BI that leads me to think it may not happen anytime soon, even if it might happen longer term in terms of AI potentially replacing BI, is that BI already has that structure in place. So they've already got sort of a standard way that you can create tools, to create reports, create BI outputs that then you back into to get the data into those tools. Whereas with AI, you're sort of starting from scratch. You sort of have this blank canvas now that you've got to figure out, how do I make sure that I'm asking and prompting AI the right way, and that I'm, teaching AI the way I need to, and individuals might use AI inconsistently across the organization, whereas BI gives everyone sort of a standard tool set. So I think there is some merit to what he's saying, which he's more on the camp of this isn't going to get replaced by AI. And I tend to agree with that. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, maybe 5 or 10 years or somewhere down the line it does. But in the short term, I don't see AI overtaking BI, largely because of the ease of use of BI and the fact that so much of it is already predefined and pre-created for organizations.
Could part of that be that people, don't like change? I know that's something we talk about a lot here too. So if you say, AI is going to be taking over BI completely, how does people in each company react to that? Would that be a part of that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, maybe people are less threatened by business intelligence. It's not quite as it doesn't have the same fear factor in terms of automating my job or taking my job away or whatever, even if BI tools do in fact build in AI into their tool sets, which is sort of what Dominique was referring to. It sounds like they're sort of coming together to sort of provide the best of both worlds. So I think you're right. It could be less resistance, and I think if anything, it's less resistance in some ways for BI tools because they're predefined, so it already gives you a tool that you can use, rather than you having to figure out how am I going to use AI to sort of replicate or mimic what a BI tool could do, off the shelf or out of the box.
For sure. That's super interesting. What a great conversation today. And thank you for answering those follow-up questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are good ones. And a lot of questions. I'm glad you brought up the data governance and some of the other stuff that we didn't get to during the interview. So that was a good follow-up. So we're going to continue down this thread of ERP software, ERP technologies, and we're going to shift gears here in just a moment. We're going to go behind the scenes at an industry conference. I was actually at I believe it was the Oracle Cloud World Conference, if I remember correctly, where I filmed behind the scenes to ask different people at the conference what they think the keys to success are. So I asked a lot of consultants, a lot of Oracle partners, and even some customers of Oracle. I asked them, what do they think the keys to success are? What were some of their lessons of having gone through all these implementations? So we're going to play you that clip and then see what you think, and we'll debrief on some of it here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company's called Roll-Off Consulting. And if you're familiar with Emma Roll-Off, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space. And she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people. Whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 195. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. So we're going to play you this clip. There's a video on my YouTube channel that I recently published where I was able to go on the scene at the Oracle Cloud World Conference and ask a bunch of people, a bunch of industry experts, what they think the keys to ERP implementation success are. Not just for Oracle ERP implementations, but just for ERP implementations in general. It just so happened that I was at an Oracle conference. We go to a lot of different vendor conferences throughout the year, and this is just the most recent one. But thought it'd be interesting to play this clip to see what these people all have to say about what they think the keys to ERP implementation success are. So since I can't seem to talk today, we'll let them do the talking here, and let's play the clip of keys to ERP success.
One of the things that Oracle Fusion customers or any other ERP customer can learn from is other customers that have been through implementations. And one of the biggest benefits from talking to other people that have been through implementations time and time again is just what are the lessons? What are the things we need to know before we start on an Oracle Fusion or any other sort of ERP implementation? So I'm here at the Oracle Cloud World Conference here in 2024, and I'm here to talk to people in the Oracle community to find out from them what they think the keys to success are. I certainly have my own opinions, I have my own experiences, but I want to hear what other people have to say about what it's going to take to be successful in their Oracle Fusion ERP implementation. Now, before I jump into this conference, a quick disclaimer. I am not affiliated with Oracle, neither is my company, Third Stage Consulting. We weren't paid to create this video. In many cases, most cases, the people we're talking to don't know that we're going to come talk to them. So I'm going to go sort of undercover here to find out what people think about what it takes to be successful and get the real truth about what it takes to be successful in their ERP implementations. So let's jump into the conference. For an organization that's about to start an ERP implementation, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them? Like, what's that one thing they should remember as they get started?
Well, I think for ERP, really it's understanding what you're going to change, understanding your plan, your roadmap. So doing a proper advisory or ideation up front, so you really understand what needs to happen, why am I changing, what are all the things you would expect, what are your outcomes, but understanding that up front so you build the right roadmap with the right product, bring in the right partner expertise to help you where you need it. So, I would advise using one of the great partners here. Love it to be DXC, but there's lots of great partners in the economy.
Right.
So, do your check and your, all your advisory stuff up front to make sure you know what you're going to do.
So tell me a little bit about Epicenter. What do you guys do?
Well, Epicenter in a nutshell is that we help Oracle Cloud HCM customers integrate Oracle Cloud HCM with the rest of their system landscape. So think all their payroll systems and any other system that consumes employee data. Typically very challenging, we make it very easy. Data is the gold, very sharp. It's the most valuable asset you have, so make sure that your ERP installation, HCM installation has data at the forefront of it, and what do you want to get out of that data, and what other systems that need to go to.
Great. What would you add? Loved it.
I'd say as well, leverage the partner ecosystem. Look, we're surrounded here by lots of people who have, decades of knowledge within the Oracle market. So use that knowledge, use Epicenter, and to be able to make your journey much more easy and much more successful.
Yeah, great. How about you, Ilaria? What would you add?
Yeah, I would say to consider all the HR system landscape and how they integrate with the Oracle HCM Cloud.
One thing which I saw successful are the systems or are the implementation which business actually was intimately involved in. So my thought always is these apps are not about technology. It is about business. How you can use technology to help business. So have business as an integral part of your program. That will make you successful.
We are an accounting and advisory firm. Our Oracle Solutions team obviously sits within that advisory kind of pillar, but at large, process re-engineering all the way to the implementation of the digital solution across several platforms. So,
great.
Yeah.
What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say tie your shoes before you run.
Okay.
It is a marathon, and a lot of times we see folks jump into the implementation without proper planning. So roadmap, figure out where it is you're going to go, take time, stretch, tie your shoes, make sure your team's assembled properly. It'll enable better long-term success.
Train, sleep, eat well.
Exactly. The full regimen.
Good. So Natalie, tell me a little bit about Iteria and what you guys do.
Sure. Iteria is a full-service consulting company, and we do implementations and managed services.
Right. One piece of advice I would say is definitely go with a company that knows the market, that's familiar with the market that you're in, something that can really connect for you and take it all the way home. So an end-to-end solution is so important.
So for me, it's choosing the right implementer that knows your industry. I think that's very important for the customers to know. So you need to really think about that ahead of time and know who you're working with as far as implementation is concerned.
Right, so it's not just technology, it's also knowledge of the business and the industry and all that good stuff.
And then planning, obviously, for executive sponsorship as well.
Yeah, it's key to success for sure. So in addition to talking people in the exhibit hall that I was just at, I also wanted to talk to an actual Oracle customer who's recently gone through a cloud implementation and find out what some of her lessons were, and that's what we're going to do next.
The biggest thing that I would share is communicate with all stakeholders from the very beginning, because when you try to bring people along when you're so far along down the line, it's like running a race. You're already down there, but you're trying to get them to catch up with you. But if you have them at the starting line with you, you're better off because they hear the same thing when you hear it. And if you have to change course, you have that opportunity to do that, and they're there with you. So not only with the executive level communicating there, but also the frontline workers is so key because they're actually doing the work.
It comes back to the communication, right? Both internally to the program and how that means with, making decisions quickly. People need to know when they need to make a decision and then they need to make it. Things go better when you make decisions quickly and you have alignment. So you've got to communicate and make sure that you have proper alignment. And then externally to your internal employees who are going to use the system, making sure they understand the impact of their jobs. And, when you think about how much you work, their lives, right? And you really want to make sure that they get it. And again, that comes both before the implementation and then right after, and then actually continuously.
In addition to talking to some of the Oracle partners about their thoughts on trends and success factors in the Oracle space, I also wanted to talk to a couple of Oracle executives, and that's what we're going to do next. Hari, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
Thanks for taking your time today.
Of course.
What would you say the number one key to success is? What advice would you give to a customer that's about to begin their journey to Oracle Cloud Apps?
Number one is begin your journey to the cloud apps, because there is a lot of customers sitting on the sidelines saying, I'll do it next year, or I'll do it 2 years from now. The time is now. Begin your journey, because we're talking about a lot of interesting AI use cases, a lot of interesting value proposition elements, whether it's automation or whether it's better decisions and so on. You can't get any of this if you're not on the cloud. So make the move to the cloud. That's number one. Think big, but start small, and then continuously innovate. I mean, we are continuously innovating with our software, but I think our customers can continuously innovate their business processes using our software on a continuous basis as opposed to trying to do it all up front.
Be purpose driven. Know why you're making an investment in new technology. So many times in the past, there's a mandate: thou shalt use new technology. You go to the cloud, right? By companies really focusing on their business outcomes that they're trying to drive, it'll really be the guiding force for them to figure out what are the priorities that I need to implement first.
Cloud is different. Cloud is, every quarter we are producing literally hundreds of new capabilities. So the mindset has to be, we are continuously improving and implementing and adjusting, or incrementally, as Gerald said. It's an ongoing process. It's not I do it once and then I'm done for the next generation. But it's a change in mindset of how people approach the use of technology and the continuous evolution of it.
So this is what some of the executives and customers of Oracle think are the keys to success for Oracle Fusion ERP implementations. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think the keys to success are? What's the number one thing you would leave potential implementation customers with? I'd love to hear comments and the feedback below.
All right, so that was the keys to ERP implementation success based on my experience at a recent conference at the Oracle Cloud World Conference. Darian, what were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good and interesting whenever you do these types of videos where you're interviewing a bunch of different people and, we get their insights and their takes, which sometimes can be, unique and different than what we hear, and sometimes are, the standard of what we hear. So I think it's nice to be able to get all the different perspectives all in one place. But I have some follow-up questions for you just to keep expanding on, the questions you asked and some of the answers in the video. First of all, can you just answer for Oracle specifically, what are some of the very common pitfalls that you have seen in the planning phase? I guess this could be applied for other softwares as well, but.
Yeah, for any ERP system, one of the common things that we see, and this is certainly true with Oracle or any of the software vendors that have multiple systems that they're providing as part of their full suite of products, is really making sure that you understand which specific technologies you're going to deploy or that you're going to need to deploy to address the goals you have for whatever phase of the project you're in. If you don't understand that, then what happens is you're guessing. You're guessing as to the timeline, the resource commitment, the budget, all that stuff. So really understanding the scope of what technologies are you really rolling out and when, and also understanding how the impact, what the magnitude of impact to the organization is to be clear on what the change strategy is going to be and how long it's going to take your organization to adapt to the new technologies. Those are all things that need to be handled in the planning phase. In fact, in our on my YouTube channel, on our website, we talk a lot about this concept of phase zero. In fact, we've talked recently in this podcast, I think it was either 1 or 2 weeks ago, we had a session where I talk on this podcast about phase zero and how important it is to stay focused on phase zero. So that's something you might want to check out just in the last 2 episodes. I can't remember which one it was, but in the last 2 weeks, we had that topic. So you can learn more about it there. But I think in general, those are just a couple things that come to mind is things that oftentimes get overlooked in that phase zero.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Another question I have that came up during this video was, business process focus. And with that, what are some signs that a company needs to re-engineer its business process?
Well, anytime you have some of the common traditional red flags, you want to re-engineer your processes. So you look at things like inefficient processes. They're highly manual, they're slow, they're painful. Anytime you see those sorts of symptoms of a business process, that's one. Another one would be if you're having to work through multiple systems or move and re-enter data between systems or use a spreadsheet to manipulate data you got out of multiple systems. That's another symptom of a process being ripe for re-engineering. And then the last one I'd say is if people have different ways of doing the same process, that's another one you'd probably want to redefine and make sure that everyone's operating consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question I have here, which is kind of specific to different ERP solutions and industries, is there specific solutions that usually fit across different industries better, like manufacturing or, any other industry like that Oracle Fusion would fit it best, or SAP would, or Microsoft would, or does it really depend per company? Each company is super different.
Well, I think in general, there's certain capabilities that certain ERP systems and BI tools are going to have that are specific to an industry. So, you've got Oracle, for example, which is the topic or the conference I was at related to this. Oracle has their strengths, and they certainly have their share of manufacturing types of industries and others. But each vendor has sort of their strengths, things that they're good at that are more focused on certain industries than others. So you just want to understand that, especially if you're in the mid-market. There's just a lot of options there, a lot of niche products that are focused on certain industries or certain functions. So some vendors are trying to be a little bit of everything to everyone, like SAP and Oracle and Microsoft. But then within the mid-market, especially, so sort of the second tier of ERP providers, there's a lot of them that are really focused on specific industries.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's super interesting, but what a great video example. Hopefully our audience gained some insight on, all the different perspectives that were provided today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always love to get all these different perspectives when I'm talking to the people, and then certainly seeing the summary of it on a video is always interesting too. So hope that was helpful. And I want to thank you, Darian, for co-hosting here today and all the great interaction and questions. Thank you to the audience for the great questions and being supportive of this podcast. I appreciate you being here today. Again, if you want to see any of the past episodes of this show, just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com. New episodes come out every Wednesday, but you can also go back and watch all 195 or 194 previous episodes that you might have missed. So be sure to check that out at transformationgroundcontrol.com. This show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients through digital transformations, and is produced by Major Tom Productions. So thanks for being here today. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.